Well, the Indianapolis Colts got their first victory today, but there's so much more to look at in this game, both on the good side and the bad side. All that and more on today's video. What's going on? It's Elijah from Sports Talk Indy, where we cover all things Colts every single day. And this was an exciting win. The Colts rushed for 3 touchdowns. Jonathan Taylor got it going and really looked great. And there was a lot of people already, they were calling for the benching of Anthony Richardson. And I'm going to explain this game as if you didn't watch the game, but also hopefully will provide some helpful insight to even those who did watch the game. So the first thing to note is that Caleb Williams attempted 52 passes today. Obviously, he had 363 yards through the air. Some of that was inflated. The Colts kind of got a little soft there at the end, which was not a bad thing because it allowed for the opportunity for they were going no touchdowns, right? So some of that's a little inflated there at the second quarter, and at the end of the fourth quarter was kind of a little softer. But the important thing to note is that his quarterback rating was a 35.7, while his overall rating was 80.8. So not a fantastic day. He had 2 touchdowns, 2 interceptions. We'll get more into those interceptions in a second. But the big thing to note is while we talked about the Colts defense and specifically the rushing defense, they were ranked 32nd in the league. They had allowed 232 rushing yards per game so far this season. That was dead last in the NFL. They allowed a total of 63 yards today on 28 carries for an average of 2.3. So that was a massive improvement for this Colts defense. And if you looked, it wasn't just that the Bears were bad at running, but this Colts team looked more motivated to stop the run. But not only that, because they were able to do that, they were also able to make predictable and good plays in the passing. And so Rome Odunze had quite a bit. He had 112 yards. Cole Kmet had 97 yards. And those were the 2 main targets for Caleb Williams. And both those kind of came off of some, like I said, some softer there at the end. But some great throws by Caleb Williams. Also some really bad throws by Caleb Williams. So that's kind of it. The only thing we really need to talk about on the Bears side, they had 2 interceptions on Anthony Richardson, one by Jalen Johnson, one by Tremaine Edmonds. And then, yeah, nothing else really of note on that side of things. Their kicker obviously had 1 make, 1 miss, and then, got the extra points as well. So let's move over to the Colts side, because that's where, obviously, this is the Colts channel, so we need to talk about the Indianapolis Colts. Anthony Richardson struggled. There's no denying that. He did not have his best game. And he's struggling with reads right now, which is, again, not surprising given the amount of time. And there was already people talking about benching Anthony Richardson. And if you're one of those people, just move on. I'm not going to be one of the people to say bench Anthony Richardson. You're going to have to wait 2 or 3 years for me to actually get behind the bench Anthony Richardson, because what this guy can do is unbelievable. He's still so young. He's still so green. And again, when you look at this guy play, I have something I noticed specifically in this game. Anthony Richardson he had a couple of really drop the shoulder runs, but other than that, it seems like he's not trying to run the football near as much as he was last year. And I think there's a blend between what he's doing this year and what he did last year. But it definitely seems like he's a little bit more panicked and he's struggling a little bit. But I don't think it's anything that can be undertweaked. And I tweeted this out earlier. I'm no quarterback, but a lot of Anthony Richardson's misses have been overthrows. And not overthrows as in too far, but overthrows as in just vertically higher than the wide receiver. And so I don't know if that's something that you can tweak or whatever, but it's definitely something to keep an eye on, because it does seem that if he's able to kind of narrow that down and really understand his own strength, because he's throwing nuclear bombs, really just missiles on lower than 8 yards, and really just hitting these guys, and it's almost impossible to catch that ball. But then he's kind of floating some other ones, so it really just seems like calibrating that arm of his, and maybe that comes after the shoulder surgery and all that stuff. But Anthony Richardson struggled through the air. He had 2 interceptions, only 1 sack for 11 yards, and that was that one that really was kind of bouncing around. His forward progress was stopped and all that. But he was 10 of 20 for 167 yards, and then no touchdowns, 2 interceptions. But the real thing of note here is the Indianapolis Colts rushing, which has been a dominant force so far in this season, and especially when they have good design runs. Jonathan Taylor looked like a top 3 back in the league today. He had some runs specifically where his delay is second to none, when he is able to sit and kind of get good movement, he'll sit behind a blocker and then explode out the right or left side. It's second to none. He had an absolutely phenomenal day, really proved why he is paid and deserves to be paid as one of the best backs in the league. He had a 29-yard run, which was just an absolute cannon run. But also you saw him get to the 5, right? Or I think it was the 4 or the 3, whatever. And then Trey Sermon gets in. And Trey Sermon gets in when he's at the 2. And he gets the play, and then he gets the football, kind of gets stopped. Anthony Richardson jumps in, and then the entire offense pushes Trey Sermon. It was really, really one of those things, one of those team moments that you see that's just something of dreams. And it was absolutely fantastic. Trey Sermon got the touchdown. But not only that, but even though Jonathan Taylor got Trey Sermon to the 4-yard line, Jonathan Taylor was as excited as anyone else to see this play, and I thought that was absolutely fantastic. Alec Pierce had 1 reception on 2 targets, and it was a 44-yard, and then Kylan Granson had 1 reception on 1 target for a 40-yard, and then Michael Pittman had 4 receptions for 36 yards, Jonathan Taylor 1 for 25. He obviously had that big drop, and then Josh Downs immediately showed an impact with 3 for 22, which doesn't seem like a lot, but he was really, really that kind of dominant guy, that not dominant, but just that safety net for Anthony Richardson. I think that's going to come into play a lot more as the season progresses. And this is not a Bears front 4, at least, that is something to knock at. They have Montez Sweat. They have several guys on this defensive line that obviously made it very difficult for this Colts offensive line, and yet they were still able to get the win and still able to get 3 rushing touchdowns, which I thought was fantastic. So the Colts did a better job in rush protection than they did in pass protection today. Anthony Richardson did face a lot of pressure today. And a lot of that has to do with him, I think, not exactly knowing when plays are going to develop or how they're going to develop, and that just comes from experience. So Zaire Franklin led the team in tackles, and then obviously big storyline today was Jalen Jones had 2 interceptions today, and obviously the big news is Leatu Latu got his first sack, and it was a massive game-winning strip sack. The Colts were able to immediately turn that into points, and it was fantastic to see. I mean, he looked like a kid on Christmas morning after finally getting that first sack. He's been so close so many times, but this was a Colts team that had 4 sacks today, which was absolutely, I mean, that's a good number to have. Obviously, you want more, but Kenny Moore had half a sack. Kwity Paye had half a sack. And then Adam Awore had a sack. Taven Bryan, who we've been talking about this a lot this week, having to fill in for injured DeForest Buckner, he had a sack. He looked really good in the pass pressure. So if he's able to kind of narrow that in specifically, I'd love to see the stats as they come out on what he was able to do in the rushing defense category. But he did really good in pass defense. I mean, Caleb Williams was running for his life several times in this game, and I thought it was very, very good. And again, I'd love to see the pressures and what that looks like as we kind of dive into what's left of this game. But all in all, Jalen Jones having 2 interceptions, and not only that, but they were 2 really good quality interceptions, and something that you see from a good quality back. He did very well. Dallas Flowers did well. Julian Blackmon had 3 almost interceptions that were right outside his reach. So it seems that the Colts switching, and we'll cover this again probably in the next video, of this safety switch. Nick Cross being at the strong safety, taking that a little bit from Julian Blackmon, and Julian Blackmon switching back to free safety. So they're kind of bouncing back and forth, but it worked. It worked very well today. There was one play today specifically where Rome Odunze was able to get the ball, but Nick Cross had perfect coverage on a guy that was missed by the cornerback. I don't remember. I think that was Lamons that missed that coverage, but Nick Cross was able to pick it up and was really went through his arm to get that, and that was kind of like a wild sort of a play. It was just something that it could have gone either way. It could have been batted or it could have been caught. Really no fault to Nick Cross there. So obviously a great day defensively for the Indianapolis Colts, and a great day all the way around because obviously every other team in the division so far has lost. Will Levis is continuing to Will Levis, which you can't say much because our quarterback's not outperforming him by too much, or if any right now, but continues to really throw games away. And then obviously Minnesota destroyed the Texans today. So good day for the Indianapolis Colts. It really seems that this is a get back game. The defense was able to get back in stride, and if Anthony Richardson continues to develop and figure things out, again, he looks good. There are just some plays that you just see that you're like, man, that's just not a play that a veteran quarterback makes. And a lot of that comes from just not being healthy last season and then still just trying to figure out this offensive scheme. And I think for the offensive play calls, just seeing what they're doing, it seems like they're also still trying to figure out what they have in Anthony Richardson. So it's a learning process all the way around, but all in all, a very, very good game for the Indianapolis Colts and a lot to look forward to and move on from.